So good evening, everyone. So in this session, we'll be talking about the information vortex theory. So myself, Dr. Deepavalli, and my co-author, Dr. Arun Bale, pertaining to the origin of life. Now, consciousness contains salient elements in living beings such as sentience, the ability to experience feelings, and memory. The cellular membranes are excitable and are considered to be the cause of sentience and memory. Now, there are also important elements in the cytoskeleton that are believed to be involved in information processing and information storage. The first one is the lipid bilayer in the cell membrane, which possesses quasi-crystalline properties, which can support the information processing. And the second one is the actin filaments, which are believed to act as excitable media and are also supposed to be involved in transporting the organelles and ionic waves. So the next important thing is the microtubules. As you can see, the lipid bilayers, okay? And these are the actin filaments, and we now move to the microtubules. As you can see, okay, the OR theory proposes that the microtubules with their, am I audible? Like, Arun?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're audible.
The OR theory proposes that the microtubules with their strong oscillations act as signal amplifiers and filters. The resonance frequencies observed in microtubules inside the brain neurons are suggestive of information processing capability. However, there is also evidence that is showing up from an alternative hypothesis, which can be explained by the help of the organism, which is the paramecium chordatum. Now, this organism, okay, so it has been shown that this organism responds to application of a minimally electric current, and it can discriminate between the brightness levels generating responses. Now, while it encounters an obstacle, the stroke of the cilia is reversed and the organism is able to swim backwards for a while before resuming its forward progress. Now, the possible instance of cell memory or epigenetic learning in organisms with no nervous system is claimed from this observation. Now, researchers have also tried to disrupt this microtubular dynamics in the, as you can see here. Yeah, so the researchers have also tried to disrupt the microtubular dynamics in the organism using an anti-microtubular agent, with the expectation that the information processing capability of the organism will drop or disappear, but the results are suggesting otherwise. So it was experimentally found that the anti-microtubular agent could not interfere with the learning process. Thus, it was confirmed that the microtubules are probably not vital for the learning behavior of the paramecium. So now the big question is that the information processing emergence is beyond the microtubules formation. Now, stepping into the spark of life, the microfossils discovered in the banded iron rocks as early as 4.28 giga-years are considered by researchers to be the evidence of earliest life on Earth. The genomic approach to the bacteria and archaea branches identified almost 355 common gene sets from about 285,000 protein clusters, arriving at the last universal common ancestor, which we call the LEUCA, the so far best known representative of the early life forms. Now, getting into the research about the spark of life, the process abiogenesis in nature emerges from the inanimate matter, which is characterized by the prebiotic synthesis of organic molecules, organic self-replication, self-assembly, and emergence of self-membrane. The renowned Miller experiment demonstrated that the physical building blocks of abiogenesis can be synthesized abiotically, leading to the prebiotic chemistry framework. Now, this prebiotic chemistry framework is alone not sufficient for abiogenesis. The N-space epigenome, which enables the mutualized organism-wide information management, is also necessary for the formation of spark of life. Now, The challenges with the prebiotic complex emergence involves the complex interlinking between the parts of the system to enable the functions witnessed in the early life forms such as eukarya. It is also obvious that the flow of matter and energy across the early molecular systems have led to the development of more ordered states, enabling the interlinking between the parts, causing the emergence of systemic functions witnessed. And the complex interlinking must have also involved information flow between the parts. Thus, the inception of the first genetic imprints was made possible by the matter, energy, and information flow across the molecular structures that were independently capable of self-replication, self-assembly, and autocatalysis. So these are the challenges. So for which we have proposed the hypothesis, which will be now explained by my co-author, Dr. Arun Vail. Over to you, Dr. Arun Vail.
Thank you. To begin with, let's focus on the nature of reality. In this section, first we list down some of the relevant hypotheses that could be useful before we step into our hypothesis. So the first one is Wheeler's space form, tiny scale vibrations in Einstein spacetime, reflecting as the vacuum energy fluctuations. The second one is Casimir effect, such vacuum energy fluctuations resulting in a push force causing a motion in a microscale. And in the same lines, Dr. Sorley, Dr. Ramanujam, and many others, such as Dr. Splitner, Fedi, Sinha, Lesage, and Fatio, have proposed a push gravity-based hypothesis to explain gravity primarily, and some of them have expanded the same to electromagnetic forces also. So with this hypothesis in the background, let's now step into what our nature of reality positioning is. So to begin with, space, according to this theory, is a continuum of internal energy at Planck scale fluctuations. Owing to energy pressure differentials, local peaks actually form in the continuum. And such peaks fractionate to form multitudes of quanta. The quanta produced are subjected to the energy pressure pulses, compacted to form a pack, so-called the fundamental particle. And pressure energy pulses acting on the fundamental particle all around cause a spin or degrees of motion, to be in simple terms. Owing to the spin, the quanta from the periphery of the forming pack tend to escape radially, and such an event is limited by the continuous potential energy forming a field around the particle. So in simple terms, pressure pulsations actually describe the nature of reality that we are looking at. And moving forward, before we start off with the information vortex hypothesis for biological matter, let's ask a very basic commonsensical question. Nature does a lot of spiral designs, be it galaxy shape or a sunflower seed shape, or human thumbprints, or even human hair old. All of this have spirality and a vortex in common. So there must be a common physical law that governs such a mechanism, isn't it? Now let's step into what our hypothesis on information vortex is. So from the molecules of the prebiotic complex, quanta tend to disperse into the fabric of reality. We have seen every fundamental particle has this quanta associated with it as a field. This is just a continuation of the nature of reality hypothesis that we saw. And then subjected to the pulsating pressure all around, such a dispersing quanta would manifest as a fractional rotating field. The fractional rotating field, a vortex, naturally forms in time. And any cytoplasmic mechanical, chemical, thermal, or electromagnetic event, they induce perturbations in such a rotating field. Such perturbations, according to the pulsating pressure from all around, would tend to focus towards a vortex region. And this is what we call as signals. Every perturbation forms the very fundamental thing, which is the signal, which gets carried to the vortex region. The vortex, in such a manner, the vortex actually becomes an information storage and repository. And the wave interference superposition in the repository results in new waveforms. And these new waveforms are generated and they would propagate in the entire field. And this is what we would call as the response wavelets. Thus, the information vortex manifests as the repository, first as the memory, and also as the processor by engaging in interference between the newly arriving waves in the vortex region. So this is the primary hypothesis that we are working on, and I will show you the mathematical explanation in the next slide. Yeah. So what we have computed using fundamental physical laws is that vortex spatial coordinates. This is where would it form? What is the linear velocity? What is the radial velocity and the energy level of the vortex? And in step one, as we all know, a cytoplasmic matter is always at a vibratory state, a resonant state. So that's the base case. The vibrational energy of the cytoskeleton is the base case. To calculate this, we have computed the mechanical energy associated with the vibration using a reduction factor. We have imparted some amount of this energy onto the Planck's law, and there we have computed actually the velocity in radial and linear terms. Then, as a step two, what we have done is we have taken the cases of perturbations. Each perturbation, electromagnetic or mechanical, it's taken as a waveform, and these waveforms are subjected to the vorticity condition, the curl vector, and based on which we have computed the energy levels and the velocity levels as well as the coordinates of the vortex. So these are the two steps in we have approached, and we have some interesting results that suggest that velocities close to speed of light or even exceeding speed of light is possible as far as this wave transfer is concerned. Now, is there any experimental support to this, or we are just talking theoretically? Vortices are actually reported in microtubules in 2021 by Anirban and his lab colleagues. They have demonstrated that there are multiple resonant frequencies possible, and in those states, vortices are actually showing up in microtubules. Also, certain works have shown that spiral waves are associated with cell colonies, and they are also experimentally found out in certain other works. So the hypothesis that there can be a vortex and it can participate in information processing probably is not far away from being proven experimentally. That's the first gut feeling that we have. Next one, please. Yeah, so using the same theory, we are trying to explain emergence of genome and physiological function. So first, we would start to look into the pressure from the nature of reality acting on the cytoplasmic matter. So first sense signal in the vortex is actually the pressure from the fabric of reality. The prebiotic soup, when it forms and when it engages with the pressure from the fabric of reality, the first sense signal is actually formed in its vortex. Further sense signal in the vortex can be from the surfaces on which it's forming. Things like slope, things like obstruction, etc., will cause certain type of jerk onto the cytoplasmic matter, which will be a basic, let's say, vibratory load, and this will be imparted as an energy infusion into the field, which will be carried to the vortex. So this is how sense as a characteristic is formed in life matter according to us. Next one, please. Yeah, now let's look at the other basic characteristics. We know that in protists, we are looking at formation of sense, nutrition, locomotion, and reproduction. In case of nutrition, particles naturally diffuse via the cell membrane and they get into the cytoplasmic matrix. And there are chemical reactions that take place producing energy. Each event, this is percolation and also the chemical reaction, all of them, they induce shock waves in the field and they get carried to the vortex and they get recorded therein. And this actually is the first instance wherein the information vortex learns how to perform nutrition. And repetition of this signal in the form of a response wave is what we call as nutrition as per our theory. And then the next thing is locomotion. Every life form forms on the surface of Earth or a planet or an asteroid. So in that case, there is a gravitational field associated with that particular surface. And such a gravitational field would cause slip movements. This movement or slip can actually act as a whole on the cytoplasmic matrix or as a local phenomena on the cytoplasmic matrix. When something like this occurs, the motion causes a shock wave on the field, which gets again carried to the central zone or the vortex zone, and the information gets stored therein. This is how the vortex learns that there is something called as movement or locomotion. And then the next step is reproduction. Reproduction is an extension to locomotion. So with the same thing, if there is, with the same movement phenomena, a local movement phenomena inside the cytoplasm, if there is a shear between, if there is a shear occurring between the two layers of the cytoplasm. And if one layer moves faster than the other, causing discontinuity, such a discontinuity results in a part of the cytoplasm to be shed away. And this is how the information vortex actually learns that a part of the cytoplasm can be shed away. The process generally called as asexual reproduction or mitosis, meiosis in medical terms. So, and then moving on to the other area, which is how a genome is first formed according to this theory. Waves in the information vortex actually interfere, superpose with the molecular change quanta field in the locality, which is the vortex itself. This results in that particular molecular chain acquiring the information set. Such a molecular chain emerging as the first genetic material in life forms is what the theory believes in. There is further research to be done on this one. We know there are lots of processes that are involved in DNA in terms of how it replicates, so on and so forth. We have not gotten to those levels yet, but we have formed a hypothesis that the evolution of a genome is actually because of the information vortex that forms in that region. And this must be the very rudimentary form of information signaling. It's actually a spiral signaling pathway as opposed to the other pathways claimed in literature. So that's where we are at this point in time. So the authors of this work, me and Dr. Deepa, we express our sincere gratitude to the source texts of philosopher Vedatri Maharishi. These source texts actually guided for us to perform this research and put this scientific proposition in place with some mathematical, mathematical calculations in place, and seeking out to get some experimental evidence, so on and so forth. But most of the work remains as a hypothesis, and it has to be experimentally proven in the coming years, and we hope for the same. And the contact emails for both the authors is listed at the bottom of the slide. We thank Maria and team for giving us opportunity to present in this conference this particular interesting idea, which is to the very core of the research that we are performing. And we wish all the best to the rest of the participants in the session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting talk. And I have a few questions. Am I right in understanding that vortices in nature create a field of information?
It's not known to us fully. That's the answer we would give. Naturally, it might be, okay, but the frequencies could be different. For example, the vortices of a galaxy could correspond to microwaves, or it could correspond to some other frequency in the electromagnetic spectrum. Whereas in the human body, we think it corresponds to the radio wave spectrum. So in a way, when a matter forms a vortex, the underlying field would also form a vortex. That's the belief that we have. But then the frequency would differ in the electromagnetic spectrum is what we think. But once again, it's a speculative hypothesis. This may change. So we can't assertively say that's how it is. We hope we answered your question, Maria.
Oh, yes. And you just talked about a rotational bioinformation field. What form of matter can determine this field?
For us, the very formation of this field itself is associated with a parental source continuum. Deepa, if you can go back to the nature of reality slide. Yeah, right.
This one?
Yeah, exactly. So in Indian philosophy, this particular continuum of energy would be called as, let's say, Brahman or Veli. So this is the very foundational form of energy, which is all pervading. And a localized, intense form of this energy is actually the particle, or in Indian knowledge system, this would be called as Paramanu. And the radiating energy from the outside is the field that we are talking about. This field will be called as Prana and or Gandham. And this particular energy field is what we are talking about. So wherever we have a particle, this energy field forms. It's just that the frequency of the energy field would be characteristic to the matter that we are dealing with. So in a biological matter, we think that this field is absolutely responsible for carrying the information.
Okay, and one more question. Can you solve the problem of the formation of the geometry of the human body during the formation of a child from one cell?
Yeah,
What do you
so
think about it?
it's a pretty good question. So, Deepa, if you could go back to the slide where we talk about sense, I'll try to describe that. Right. So there are two, yeah, there are two forces that actually govern this one. Basically, the all surrounding compressive force that you find in figure one, the left top of it, that's going to make everything spherical. If you look at many of the planet shapes or galaxy shapes, we will end up with a uniformity. This is going to be either spiral or spherical because of this pressure force that subtly acts on them. Now, in human beings, there's also something else that's happening. The radiating field from the particle gives them what we call this will. If let's say a small child has to reach out to an apple, then it puts its hand forward, which means the field is acting in that direction. So any shape and form that you will find is a combination of this pressure force that acts all around, plus this magnetic force, or rather the biofield that acts towards a direction because of a will that forms. So in biosystem, expecting a perfect spherical outcome is not possible because of the will that has formed. For example, I would say the early cytoplasmic matter that has formed for the simplicity of, let's say, information processing, formed the brain at the frontal region where it has to seek for food. So brain is not in the central region, it's at the corner where, or it's at a space where it's at a location where it has to fetch the food to live. So it's the will force, which is described by the basic fundamental quanta dispersion that decides where brain would be. So perfect symmetry in terms of brain is not easy to achieve in all creatures, is what I believe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer. Please, Professor Shipov, you want to ask?
Yes. It is possible to explain using your theory. For example, levitation of yogas.
Yeah.
Levitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fairly simpler because levitation of physical body, this theory would not support that, just to be very clear on that, okay? If somebody tries to claim, we would say it's a rather pseudoscience, but levitation of the biomagnetic field or the biofield is clearly possible because that's least affected by the gravitational field that acts on it. The pressure that acts on the top of the body is rather subtler to it. And if you would like to extend this particular field in a direction that you want to, it's possible to project. So that's the response to it.
Did you see the levitation in India? Did you see? No.
Okay, so no. Well, we hear, we read, and some of us experience.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions? Any questions? No. So, and we are going to lunch.